12 now to Peter Allen.
Okay. Well, thank you for that endorsement, Peter. Not actually the first endorsement that I've had this week. We've been at Hustings and in Glossop on Sunday, and even more vociferously last night, the Liberal Dem candidate in particular was basically saying he was essentially a Green Party person, but that you should vote for the Liberal Democrats so that next time we'd have PR, and then you could vote for Peter and the Greens. It brought the house down. So I'm rather used to endorsements this week, but thanks for that, Peter. I want to talk about the essence, well, one of the crucial political debate at the moment, which is the whole issue of spending cuts and whether they're necessary and whether there's an alternative. Now, all three main parties are telling us that there will be cuts in public services. The think tanks and the financial classes are saying that they're not being vociferous enough about it, they're hiding it a bit, but there's clearly no doubt that after the election, cuts are on the agenda, huge style. There are alternatives, and the Green Party doesn't believe that cuts are necessary or sensible to make. Let's just remind ourselves, we're in debt because the banking sector collapsed, sparking a recession. The bailing out of the banks has cost billions, and the recession has hit tax revenues and has increased unemployment. Public services did not cause this crisis, and we should not have to pay for it. That's our position. And in this election, the Green Party is the only major party, and we are standing in over 300 seats, which is resisting the cuts agenda and which has an alternative. And to quote the Green Party manifesto, the Green Party is the party of hope and radical change. Goes on to say there are three defining crises of our time. There's a debt-fueled economy teetering on the edge of collapse, there's massive inequality of income and assets, and there's catastrophic climate change. There's a need for a joined-up approach to address all of these crises, and the Green Party has developed this approach. We call it the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is all about investing massively to create jobs and move towards a sustainable, zero-carbon economy. What we've seen over the past year is an economy in turmoil. It's so obvious that business as usual doesn't work. We have to build a sustainable economy and a society, otherwise there's no future for anyone. That's what our manifesto says. What do we need to do? We need to invest in the green economy. We need to raise taxes. We need to regulate the financial sector more strictly. We need to control the banks. And this is the thing that we're focusing on tonight, we need to protect basic public services and improve them. And basically the Green Party is saying not only should there not be spending cuts, but there is actually the money, as long as we have the political will, to improve services in key areas. Firstly, we want to invest in public transport. We're actually going to put no more money into roads. We're going to redirect the budget from roads, which is about £30 billion over a 10-year period, into public transport, including reducing fares on public transport by, we reckon, up to about 10%, expanding the rail network, including locally. One would assume would include reopening the Woodhead and also the Buxton to Matlock line. We want to invest in light rapid transport systems. We want to re-regulate the buses and improve services, and we want to re-nationalise the railways. We're going to introduce tolls for heavy lorries and taxation on aviation that reflects its full environmental costs. We reckon that the under-taxation of aviation fuel and exempting flights from VAT currently costs about £10 billion a year that should be getting collected. We would introduce a massive programme of direct government investment in large-scale wind and other renewable generation, up to 20 billion over a 5-year parliament, not only to reduce carbon and to improve our and to basically move to a sustainable energy economy, but also creating about 80,000 jobs. We reckon we should be able to get half of our energy from the renewable sources by 2020 and for zero emissions from power generation by 2030. We're talking about the new green 3 Rs. We want to remove demand altogether where it's possible. For instance, is there any need to fly to London? Should anybody be flying to London? Secondly, we want to reduce demand by energy efficiency measures. And thirdly, we want to replace remaining demand by switching to renewables. We've also got this idea of introducing carbon quotas, which involves each individual having basically a carbon allowance, which they could either use up or not use up. If they didn't use it up, they could actually sell it to somebody else. Somebody went round everywhere on a bike, didn't use up their carbon quota. They could sell their carbon quota to somebody else who was in the habit of taking 4 or 5 transatlantic flights a year. And as well as being good and hopefully going to save energy and promote good and sustainable way of living, it's also a way of actually redirecting resources and promoting our equality agenda. Because rich people, by and large, have a much higher carbon footprint than poor people. In education, we've got some specific proposals. We reckon £500 million over a 5-year period will reduce class sizes. We want to have free school meals, and we think that we can afford them. For all, encouraging healthy eating, creating jobs, and ending stigma. And we want to phase in, and this is a proposal that we really should be shouting from the rooftops. We have got the funding to, and we have a strategy for phasing in the abolition of tuition fees in higher education. How are we going to pay for it? Pay for it in part by removing the charitable status of private schools and VAT exemption from school fees, which I didn't even know existed, but apparently it does. We want to do something with child benefit. We won't want to tinker with tax credits. We want to actually more than double the amount of money that we put into the child benefit system. Basically, the whole belief of the Green Party is that we do things collectively, and we're collectively responsible for the well-being of everybody. And everybody in society is collectively responsible for the well-being and the upbringing of children. So a society as a whole needs to ensure that children don't grow up in poverty, and we think that the easiest, most direct and least bureaucratic way of doing that is by increasing child benefit by an extra £20 a week for each child, which actually means that we are more than doubling child benefit. Retirement pensions. We intend to introduce a retirement pension of £170 a week for a single person and £300 a week for a pensioner couple. And we believe that we can afford and we should afford free social care for the elderly. And finally, also an increase in the pittance of the carers allowance, which is less than £50 a week at the moment, or around £50 a week. We want to increase it by 50%. We want to increase it to £80 a week. Still not enough. To get carers allowance, you actually have to be a full-time carer, which means that you've signed something to say and you've accepted that you are looking after somebody for £30, for 30 hours a week or more. And for that, you're going to be paid £80 a week. So still a pittance and not enough